Hey y'all, I'm Ellen. We've been super inspired by our journeys of self-healing and discovery.
And I'm Sam, and we want to share our experiences with you to help you get curious about yourself, reconnect, and get intentional about your life so you know what makes you happy.
Welcome to Woo New, the podcast. Today, I am so excited to introduce our guest, Ellen Scanlon, who is the host and co-founder of the How to Do the Pot podcast. She is a cannabis, I feel like I want to call you a guru. She knows all things cannabis, and this beautiful podcast is kind of I like to think of it, it's like a cannabis handbook or way shower for women on how all this beautiful plant can support all of us, physically, mentally, emotionally, all the things. And so I just want to welcome Ellen now. Thank you so much for joining us. And I cannot wait to just pick your brain on all things cannabis today.
Oh, well, I can't wait either. Thank you very much for having me.
This is just such a subject that is near and dear to Sam and I's heart. And we each have our different relationships with it. So I don't know, Sam, if you want to kind of explain your relationship with cannabis, and I'll explain mine. But we can maybe start there and get into, Ellen, your backstory of how you even became in relationship with cannabis.
Yeah. I was looking through your site earlier, and there's so much interesting content. And it really made me start thinking about the ways that I've used cannabis in the past. It definitely started early on when I was in high school and college, and I would just smoke recreationally. But I always suffered from ocular migraines. And so one of the only ways that I was able to find some relief from those, especially, when they would get so bad that I couldn't keep medicine down, was by smoking weed. And so it's been a really powerful healer in my life. And I would say I smoke very regularly. And it's different now, though, than it was when it was earlier on, and I was just trying to get it for specific medical use, and it wasn't available to the public the way that it is. There were some really interesting experiences with, the process of procuring a medical license, and then, where you could go, and the places that you could really get taken advantage of. It was super interesting, but now it's just so commonplace, at least out here in California. And I know it is back where I'm from in Denver as well. So it's been an interesting journey, but I had never used cannabis in a ritualistic sort of way, or seen it as sort of like a psychedelic guide, if you will, until I started journeying with Ellen on her cannabis journeys and her quantum journeys. And I was really blown away by the power that the cannabis had, because I had used it regularly before and never experienced it in that way. I was like, wow, I haven't been appreciating this medicine the way that I should have.
Yeah, to be honest, I had always a really complicated relationship with it, because I think going to college in Austin, where literally I feel like it's the capital of the potheads, back in the 90s, even the movie Dazed and Confused, it just conjures up what Austin sort of was, or at least the Austin that I knew. And all my friends smoked, my boyfriend at the time smoked. And I think being who I was, carrying the wounds that I did, I just, I think I had this aversion to it, even though I would dip in and recreationally smoke with them. But for me, it never made me really feel very good. I think I was much more prone towards the uppers. I really loved ecstasy at the time. And so for me, cannabis just slowed me so way down that it didn't respond even I wasn't having fun with it, you know? And so I would just do it because it was there and because it was around me. But I think what I associated with it, and I didn't really quite realize the stigma I had with it until I went through this cannabis training just earlier this year, where I learned how to use cannabis as a psychedelic medicine. But I had to cut through and work through a lot of the remaining stigmas about the plant. And when I finally started to kind of experience and become in relationship with cannabis more from this like psychedelic journeying and like deep work kind of place, like inner work place, then I started realizing just how powerful and amazing cannabis actually is. And, you know, not to say like, I don't think I ever needed it for any sort of like anxiety reasons or, you know, any sort of like nervous system regulation. But some of the things I think that, you know, Ellen, that you have kind of listed on your site and talk about in your podcast, ways that, you know, cannabis can help us with rest, with sex, like all aspects of our life, you know, I think those are the things that I'm just so interested in getting to understand better, especially in this hour with you, because there are so many freaking benefits and it's crazy. And I feel like I'm just like on the surface level of what this plant offers us. So I would love to hear how you even found cannabis and brought it into your life too.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you both for sharing your journeys with it. That is helpful for me, and it is very different from my experience. So I think it'll be a fun triangle of a conversation where we can all come at the plant from different directions. I've always liked weed. I think I tried it for the first time when I was 14 or 15, and then kind of didn't try it again until, or didn't consume it regularly again until college. And for me, it always had to come through a guy. And so if there was a guy who had it, then maybe I would, you know, I was interested in trying it. But if I didn't have a guy, then I just kind of didn't think about it and would do other things. And so that was my relationship. I moved to New York City right after college, and in New York, I think a lot of the people that were that I knew were interested in more of the upper kinds of drugs, and that really wasn't my path. And so it just sort of disappeared for a while. And then I moved to California, and I had a really bad accident. I went to New Orleans for Jazz Fest, and I fell off of a bike. And the dramatic part of the story is that I broke 16 of my teeth and
Oh my gosh.
a lot of other physical damage. And what happens when you break 16 teeth is it's incredibly expensive. It's incredibly painful. It's, you know, imagine 3 appointments about for each broken tooth. And um, I don't tolerate pain medication very well. So I very quickly tried to get off of it, had a lot of side effects from taking Advil, and a lot of side effects. And I actually have I was interviewed on my podcast to share our 100th episode, and I go into this whole story if you're curious. But the high level is that I had a lot of side effects by doing exactly what my doctors were telling me to do. And then soon after that, with the help of some wonderful practitioners, more on the holistic side of things, I started to get better. And then I wanted to have a baby, and I was having a lot of trouble, infertility challenges that weren't making sense to me, and seeing many doctors. And if you've at all stepped into that world, it's very, very heavy medication with a lot of side effects. And I was just so afraid because of what had happened to me and the massive negative effects that I've had. So I really didn't want to take a lot of drugs. Led me to multiple fertility specialists around the country. And I learned when I was 39 that I have endometriosis, which was the cause of a life of very painful cramps. I'd been on the pill for a long time, so I didn't know that I had cramps because the pill just regulated my cycle. And going off, I sort of suddenly had this really, really painful monthly problem. And I ultimately was successful with IVF, and I have a 3-year-old son now. But to discover that I had a disease that now affects 1 in 10 women, and
Wow.
no one talks about it
That's
and
so
no one knows
Wow.
about it. And so that was just a stunning thing for me. I also worked for a women's healthcare startup. And so I was sort of all of these things about being a woman were coming together. And I had spent my early career on Wall Street, mostly working around all men, and really never thought kind of that men were that different from women. I know that sounds silly, but that I just didn't think about it.
Mhm.
All of those things kind of came together along with cannabis becoming legal for adult use in California. And I love startups. I love business. I love all, exciting opportunities. And I just was like, I have to get into this industry. I have to be a part of this. And so I did join the industry in 2018. And since then, I just have learned so much about how cannabis helps women. And so that's the focus of the podcast, it's the focus of the website. We also send out a newsletter every other Friday. And we're really trying to reach women who might feel a little bit afraid or might feel a little bit confused or just kind of don't know where to start. And that's the reason for the name, How to Do the Pot, because I want you to laugh a little. It is weed. We're supposed to be, having fun with this. And yes, it can be incredible for treating endometriosis, lupus. I mean, the stories that I hear are just, you cannot unhear these stories. But it also sometimes you just want to know like what weed to have on a Friday night so you feel better. So
Mhm.
it really, really runs the gamut, and it's just my passion to talk about all of the angles and think about all of the angles and then help to simplify it for people who don't think about weed all the time like I do.
That's so cool. Like when you started this, where did you find the tools to educate yourself around this information?
Well, we sort of joke that weed has always been sold through word of mouth. And that's kind of where the industry is in a lot of ways, because number one, it's just a startup industry. So there is information is in real time happening. Everyone in the industry kind of is paying attention to the same things because we're all just desperate for data and, research. So I think that it has been the generosity of people who have come before me in cannabis for sure. Podcasts are an amazing resource because you can hear from directly from the leaders of companies about what's going on. I think that in fast growing industries, it's tricky. And so there's some journalists that I follow now who, I read their stories when they're in the Wall Street Journal, when they're in the New York Times. And I love to see more stories. But I'm lucky I have one of those personalities that's sort of a rabbit hole person a bit. And so when I hear something, I think, oh, okay, that's interesting. I wonder if there's another person that has a different perspective on that. And how do I learn that? And I just follow a lot of leads.
Wow, that's
Mhm.
so cool. I mean, I never thought about using weed or CBD as a treatment or a medicine for something like endometriosis. That's crazy.
It's fantastic. And there is some research in Australia. There is always a lot of cannabis research coming out of Israel. They've been super, super advanced compared to most other countries. So the problem with the research, very honestly, is that it's mostly small.
Mhm.
Because cannabis is federally illegal, you're just not getting research dollars. You can't get national grants. They're just not the gold standard of tests and trials. And then specifically with endometriosis, add on that it's a woman's disease, that 1 in 10 women have it, and most people still don't know anything about it. And so um, I think that I'm hopeful that more research will be coming because I think that is what is really going to help people. Like right now, I can say to someone who has endometriosis, here's what works for me. Here's what's worked for other women that I've talked to, but I don't really have a protocol that I can go to. And I think that if we can get to that point, then, there's a headline news story that says, CBD helps with endometriosis. And that's something that can be shared, and someone can then take it to their doctor and figure out how to incorporate it into what is working for them or what might not be working. And we're just not there yet. So it still is a lot of anecdotes and smaller studies.
I'm finding that this is just the case for all
plant
kinds of,
medicine.
yeah,
Yeah, I was
anything
thinking
that's
the same
like,
thing.
yeah, non-pharmaceutical, right? So it's just, it is all anecdotal. And in some ways, like, I don't know how to say it, except that there's something really lovely about the way the information is being shared, because it really is almost kind of like what you're seeing is somebody, like people kind of coming together to watch out for each other and to have each other's back. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like in the sharing of the information and the content, what's working for you, and also even that idea, like what works for me may not exactly work for you, but here's a starting point, and at least like a beginning to how you can experiment and find out what works for your own body, rather than listening to some outside expert or doctor tell you what you need to know, or, you know, or what you should do. Do you know what I mean? I think sometimes that kind of almost ends up taking us down tunnels where we don't trust our bodies anymore and how our bodies are reacting.
I was just gonna say, like, it's such a powerful tool in itself, the way that it's structured, just because it's sort of like we're repatterning, right? Our trust in our bodies, and trust in our intuition, and what we know is best for our bodies, and sort of taking our power back in a little bit of a like sort of collective community. It's really cool. Which actually brings me to a really interesting question, because as we're talking about all of this stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much. What do you tell someone who just doesn't know where to start? Like, are there specific questions to ask that would like help, you know, direct you towards a specific type of product, or like, how do you go about that?
Well, I think that asking questions definitely is the first step. And I can usually tell, I don't have to ask very many for people to start talking about the problems they have with sleep, or the stress that they have, or the pain that they have. And so it very quickly, I think that people have a sense that cannabis can help, and that is kind of where the conversation starts. And so, stress, sleep, and sex are the things that people ask us about the most. Maybe they don't ask us as much about sex, but they really listen to our sex shows, and they definitely go to our website.
That would be me. I want to ask all the questions right now.
So funny.
So we are happy to have the resources out there. And one of the reasons we wanted to have a podcast is because this should be discreet. You don't have to, this doesn't have to be something that you shout from the rooftops if you're not comfortable. I am a private person as well. And we just want to make the information available. So I think that that's usually where it starts. It's been interesting over the past 2 years, not seeing people really in person, and connecting with them more. I think that the questions that have been coming to me are more like a text, like, my mom has pain. What should I do? I'm super stressed. I feel terrible. And then I kind of can say, okay, where do you stand on smoking? Do you want to consume cannabis by eating it? And I think that the practical side of it is really, really important to me. I can talk for a really long time about all of the medical benefits, but at the end of the day, if you don't practically know how to consume cannabis, it's not going to work for you. So if you're comfortable with smoking, that can often be a pretty good way to start, because you can take one hit from a joint, get a pre-roll. It's easy to find in legal states, and it won't last very long if you either like or don't like the experience. And I think that edibles can be great because you just eat the cannabis if you don't want to smoke. It's, you're used to eating food. So it's a method of consumption that you're familiar with. But if you don't like the experience, edibles can last for a really long time.
Yeah.
So,
and I found it is very easy to overdose on it, or like not overdose,
so
but
easy.
updose on edibles, because
So
it takes longer to kick in. Your body digests it in a totally different way.
It's a teeny little piece of chocolate. You're like, how bad could it be?
Yeah, and then you get high and you start snacking on the chocolate and you forget the weeds in it.
Yeah.
Also
so edibles,
have done that.
Edibles are, unless you're really gonna like follow the advice to a T, like cut it in half, don't eat
Yeah.
another one for 2 hours, they can definitely be a little bit dangerous. So tinctures, oil tinctures are not the sexiest form of consuming cannabis, but I love them because you can dose, the amount that works for you. It's not going to last terribly long. And so I think that the practicalities of it are super important to talk about, in addition to helping with migraines or sleep or other things that it definitely brings relief. There's always going to be experimentation. I wish it were different, but that's just how it is.
Yeah. I actually had no idea that. Are you talking about THC tinctures?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I seriously did not realize that that was an option
Oh, they're
because
great. Yeah.
really,
You can buy them from dispensaries, and there are a lot of amazing brands that a lot of them are run by women, actually, who started with medical issues and wanted to have a consumption method that was just simple. Yeah, oil
wow.
tinctures are amazing. I love them.
I would imagine that they would probably be more fast acting. Do they
It
have
is.
like, okay, they have like nano encapsulated kind of tinctures too, like where it's just like it hits you and you don't have to wait for the come on?
I don't know what nano encapsulated means, but it's an oil tincture, and they come with a little dropper that usually has a dosage on it. So it's like 0.5, 1.5, but 1.5. And I recommend starting with the 0.5. You'll feel the effects in about 15 minutes,
Oh,
and to
wow.
15 minutes to an hour, really depending. I take a lot of tinctures that have CBD, that are very CBD dominant.
Mhm.
And so I think that I feel sort of the relaxation effects. Some of the tinctures I've taken that have THC in them do tend to take a little bit longer. So that just may be my endocannabinoid system. It could also just be the case. That's another little anecdote, but I would say 15 to 30 minutes is
Mhm.
generally how long it takes to feel the effects. And they last anywhere from probably 1 to 3 hours.
Wow. Okay, because that's even faster than a gummy or an edible.
Much faster, much faster. Yeah, with a gummy,
Oh.
eating cannabis, we say to wait 1 to 2 hours.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I
Damn.
I
Okay.
have a question for you though, because one time, this is sort of a sidebar question, but one time I was using CBD for my dog because she was having back pain. And I had been getting the stuff that, is made for dogs. And my vet had said that I should actually go to a dispensary and get one that was like a 1 to 9 or 1 to 12 ratio of THC to CBD, because the body digests CBD differently when it is combined with THC, and like it's harder to get all of the healing benefits out of just a CBD only tincture. Is that have you ever heard of that before?
I have, and I think that this speaks to what we call the entourage effect. So it's the effect of the whole plant rather than pulling out the different cannabinoids. And I think that most people who know a lot about the agricultural side of cannabis would say that the entourage effect and taking in as many benefits from the entire plant are where you're going to get
The
the
most
best
healing.
results.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that generally the way that tinctures are labeled, that cannabis is labeled, is CBD and then a colon to the THC percentage. So like I give my dog generally a 20-to-1 ratio of 20 parts of CBD, 1 part THC. And I give her like the teeniest little drops. And my dog is 14, and she usually, it's for anxiety, and usually she'll just go to sleep. And so I think that whenever you're trying the ratios, especially with THC, it's just always a good idea to start out with a smaller amount of THC while you figure out how you feel, how you want to feel, how it affects your body. And so I think that is that's the way that I would approach it. But the entourage effect is very real, and I think that it's one of the things that a lot of people in cannabis are paying very close attention to, as there is more research being conducted, because scientists are isolating the cannabinoids, and the cannabinoids are like the two most well-known are THC and CBD, but there are several others. And while there's certainly merit and I'm sure exciting developments that will come from that, there also is just this amazing plant that's been around for thousands of years that already is kind of perfect. And so I think that trying to get as close to the whole plant is generally where people feel have the best effects.
Yeah, that makes sense because I remember being kind of bummed because I had been giving my dog CBD for a while, at least a couple months, and she was showing no effects from it at all. And it was not the cheapest option. And so I was like, wow, why is this happening? And then my vet had recommended that, and it was totally different after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think with CBD, what I have learned personally is you need more than you think for it to work. And so when you add in the THC, and there are many people who can explain this a lot more medically correctly, but there is just sort of like a magic elixir when you put the two together, especially even with just a small amount of THC, it sort of activates the properties of the CBD. And so I'm not surprised that helped to speed up the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true for topical as well, like topical CBD use?
So CBD topically will help with inflammation, and I have found it to be very effective. THC actually stops the signal to your brain so that the pain can't reach your brain. And so it's a slightly different mechanism. So if your topical pain is related to inflammation, CBD only can really, really help. And I'm not a person that has super, super chronic pain. CBD in a high dose, I use a balm that has 1,000 milligrams of CBD in it. It's from this amazing women-owned company in Louisiana. It's hemp-derived CBD, so you can buy it anywhere across the country. It's called Blissful Stoner Body Essentials. I love it. And, I send it to my father-in-law who needs to have both of his knees replaced, and not your typical cannabis consumer in any way, shape, or form. And I get a text from him about once a month, like, can you send more cream? Can you send more cream? And he doesn't need the THC because the CBD at that high of a level is fighting what his body is dealing with, which is the inflammation. So it's personal. It depends on what your pain is related to, but I have been incredibly surprised by what a high dose of CBD topically will do for pain.
So it doesn't matter. So this is hemp derived, right? Like, so I've heard, I feel like a lot of these are just rumors or speculation, but what is the difference in potency, I guess, between a hemp derived CBD and I don't even know what you would call it, like
cannabis derived?
Yeah.
You should really have a farmer on to like help you explain that. Because I'm not going to do it justice. I think that the way I think about it is, cannabis, CBD derived from the cannabis plant can only be sold in licensed dispensaries.
Right.
And things that are sold in licensed dispensaries have been tested and have had to pass regulations that have been set out by each state.
Okay.
So CBD that is hemp derived can be sold anywhere across the country. You can buy it online, you can buy it anywhere, and there are no rules. The FDA doesn't weigh in, no one weighs in. So if you don't know where your hemp derived CBD is coming from, you don't know where your hemp derived CBD is coming from.
Right.
And if you are buying CBD in a dispensary, you know that it is coming from someone who has had to go through a whole lot of hoops to get that to market. And so I think that that's the practical way to think about it. On our website, we have some CBD brands that I love and trust. Most of them are women run. And so you can check those out. And that's who I buy my CBD from. But like the CBD, everyone has this anecdote, like the CBD from your gas station, probably not worth buying.
Yeah. It just sounds, it looks suspect for sure.
Not exactly the same.
It's so funny because I guess the rumor that I heard was that the hemp derived was less potent than the cannabis derived. And so, but it sounds like, I'm totally going to hop on the website and just buy some like later, because my husband actually deals with achy muscles and that kind of thing, you know, or like, and there's one particular brand, I forget what it's called, but he swears by this brand. And I think they add in like, it's like a tiger balm kind of feeling as well. So I think it's sort of like the full effect of it. I think he feels the effects of, or he feels it helps. But what I'm hearing from you is that as long as the potency is pretty high, or I guess like the grammage is pretty high, then you're going to get the effects even from
that's what's worked the best for me and for the people who I've shared this tip with. But it's 1,000 milligrams of CBD in a balm is a lot. You know, I think if you start looking around, you'll see it's like 50 milligrams, 100 milligrams, you know, is what you're seeing. And that, you know, that might work for some people. I've just found, you know, I have like laptop wrist and, you know, all of those things that come from doing that kind of stuff. And it's the higher dosage CBD balms that bring a lot of relief.
Interesting. Okay. So can we jump into the sex category? I'm like so dying to talk to you about this. And, you know, I've been using this Foria product and I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically, it's like, you know, it's not really a lubricant, but it's like, you use it before. Yeah. You know, I don't feel like it does anything for me, to be honest, you know, and I wanted to love this product really like a lot, but it actually made me kind of question like, okay, and this, I think this is CBD specifically, but yeah, how do
you know if it works?
Yeah. And like, and also what works really, you know, and how is it used to kind of either enhance your experience or, you know, or make it less painful, whatever, you know, I want to know all the benefits.
Well, as a person with endometriosis, one of the symptoms of endometriosis can be painful sex. And so if you have any type of pain with sex, CBD, I have found it to be very effective. Most of the women that I talk to have found it to be really, really helpful. But if you don't have pain with sex, I think that the serums with THC work better.
Okay.
And you have to wait 20 minutes. You got to put it on kind of wherever you want to have the most pleasure and wait about 20 minutes. And waiting is important. It's sort of in the same way that it's important to wait on edibles. Don't take another. It's still, you know, it's coming. And so I think that it's really important to wait those 20 minutes. And, you know, THC and CBD both have shown to bring more blood flow to the area, you know, of the, I mean, I'm just going to talk about women here, but like in your vagina. And so wait, try it. I mean, when I give advice for most people, I say it's really worth it to get the THC, the sex serum with THC. If you are really trying to enhance your sex life, if you're dealing with pain, the CBD serum is great. And Foria is a wonderful company. There's a company called Quim both of these companies have CBD versions that can be sold anywhere, and then THC versions that are only available in certain states that you have to buy in dispensaries. So it's sort of an access issue. And I think that just getting in the habit of trying something and paying attention and thinking about how it feels in your body, like all of those things are good for sex too.
Right.
And so I think that can be just one of the fun parts about bringing sex into the bedroom, where, you know, you can talk to your husband or your partner or, you know, whoever you are with and be like, I'm going to try this. Let's see how it feels. And maybe that brings about a conversation that's a little bit more open. All of which are really important for sex. And what we have found though, and Matthew from Foria, who's the founder, came on our show and said, you know, this amazing quote. It was like, the benefits for women, for if you have a female partner, your partner feels more open, your partner has more pleasure. But for me, the effects aren't really for men topically. So that's sort of the second question we usually get. And it's kind of cool. You know, the cannabis plant enhances sex for women topically. And it's something that's just ours.
I love that so
Yeah, I kind of do too. It makes me like it more. It's about time.
Yeah. And then sex, you know, can definitely be enhanced using different strains. If you are interested in smoking cannabis, there are some strains that just sort of anecdotally and like fun urban legends have been known to enhance sex. Those are the strains we talk about on our show. Accessible strains are like gelato, what used to be known as Girl Scout cookies, now GSC, super silver haze. You can go on our website or listen to our episodes to hear from, we've had some amazing sex experts who have given us their favorite strains. And I think that a strain that is sort of a mix of being in your body and also calming for your mind tends to be a strain that is, those are good things when you're getting into a sexual situation.
Are those typically indicas?
So the whole sativa indica hybrid thing is a little bit complicated because it's just truly the shape and the structure of the plant that makes them different. And so by the time you get your cannabis from the retail store, most plants at this point really are hybrid. And so it's a helpful framework if you go to a dispensary and say, I want to feel more in my body. And they'll probably say, okay, here's some indica strains. And I think what you need to say is, I want to feel more in my body. What are the strains that are going to help me feel more in my body? And the how do I want to feel, answering that question and getting help with that question is going to more likely get you what you want, rather than saying like, I love sativa, because it's a classification that is not, it's not as helpful as I wish, and many people in the industry wish it were, but it just isn't. So talking about how you want to feel is more likely to get the result that you want.
Can you talk a little bit about the kinds of feelings, like besides just being in your body or whatever? Like,
Ellen, I love that you're like,
I mean, because this is fascinating to me, because the way I was taught, it was like the classic, like sativa is, it sort of, wakes up your brain and you're more alert or whatever, you're more in, like there's a lot more coursing through your mind, or so. That's kind of the way it was described to me. And yes, indica is like much more somatic. But I'm just so curious, like, is it feelings of like euphoria versus feelings of, like sleepiness or like calm? I mean, like are those the types of feelings that you're talking about?
Well, I think this actually brings up a really good point, which we should definitely talk about, which is consumption of a substance before you get into a sexual situation can be complicated. And I think that what most experts that I talk to say is practice with yourself first, because you don't know. Like you can get a gelato, which is a strain that I recommend to a lot of people. It's generally like a great mix of mind and body. It's fun. It's mellow. People like it for sex. People like it for hiking. I think it's a good idea, if you're new to cannabis, to stay home one night and have some gelato and see how you feel, like maybe you masturbate, maybe you don't, maybe you just are in your body, you take a bath. Like, how does gelato, the strain, make you feel? And then if you decide to bring cannabis into the bedroom with a partner or with yourself again, that, okay, this is what happened last time. And I liked that. I thought that having sex would be fun if I was feeling that way. And so then you can try it. So I think that cannabis is so unique. And also it's the plant. So if you're using the same, let's say it's a pre-roll pack, you probably are going to have the same feeling from all the pre-rolls in that pack. But if you buy a gelato strain from another brand, from another time of the year, it just might be a little bit different, because you can't buy the exact same apple again once you've eaten it. And so an apple that you buy in April is going to taste different than an apple that you buy in September, not to mention that it might come from a different farm. And that's sort of the cannabis issue as well, which is why it's so hard to be prescriptive. And so I think that being mindful of what you want to find from cannabis. Like, if when you have sex, you are often in your head and you're running through your to-do list, maybe look around and try some cannabis that people say helps you to calm your mind and make you feel more mellow, and try that out a little bit. And then if that is what it does for you, that might be a great strain for sex. So there are just some steps that I think it's really important to take, because I can't just say,
Yeah.
This strain is going to give you the best orgasm of your life. I wish I could.
Then that would be completely
It would
sold
be
out
gone
all
forever.
the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think something you just said too, I want to kind of go back to, and this is more of like a technical thing, but it's new to me. I didn't realize that like gelato, the strain, could be sold by many different farms or brands. Like many different brands could have their own strain of gelato, and that's the way it kind of works.
That's how it works. All strains, it's the genetics, which make gelato. And it's why strains, we actually have a list that we've created called the 12 essential strains for women. And we have a 5-minute podcast about each of the strains. And the idea isn't that you need all 12, it's that you'll probably find 2 or 3 that you like. And we have alternatives for them. And you can go into a dispensary or talk to someone who knows more about cannabis and say, for instance, I really love Cannatonic, which is a high CBD strain. I find that it just is relaxing and fun and great, but it's not available everywhere, seasonally, different brands, whatever it might be. And so by knowing that I like Cannatonic, I can say, find me something like Cannatonic. And that is something that a cannabis person can help you with. You can look online. Leafly is a great resource for that, leafly.com. And yeah, this is why cannabis is it's more complicated than you think, because there are millions of, I don't know if there are millions, many thousands of strain names. And also the cannabis that is grown in a specific state must be sold in that specific state if you're in the legal market. So yeah, it's there are a lot of layers.
Interesting. Okay. Oh, that I had cannabis delivered to my house when I was in the middle of this psychedelic, cannabis training. It was like a 5-day training thing. I needed to get it really fast. I found some guy on Yelp and he was saying that he had strains up from Washington State. And I was like, oh, cool. But interesting. Okay.
Probably not legal.
Yeah, I was like, that's definitely not legal.
I mean, they're great. I've been enjoying them, but yeah. Okay. That makes a lot more sense. I did not know that. Okay.
So this is making me think about too, like, I think something that people who maybe smoked recreationally before weed was legalized, and then experienced the effects of legalized weed, that was like medically grown, where it was, the strains were crossbred and it was enhanced to have as much THC as possible. Like a lot of people experience this sort of like weird shift of, okay, I used to be able to just like sit and smoke a J and I'd be fine, from, my dealer who, like, I met him in the back of his car for an eighth or something, however you got it, versus like, okay, I sit and have a joint now. And it's like, I've heard of actually, like, someone that Ellen and I used to work with at our digital marketing firm was telling me a story once about how he ended up in the emergency room after smoking because he thought he was going to die. And he went to the ER and the doctor told him that they've actually been seeing a lot of cases like that because people don't realize how much THC is now in the weed in a way that it never used to be before. And their bodies are having these like overdose reactions, even though they physically can't like die an overdose from it. And like, I'm so curious around, if you ever hear stories like that and like, what are some things that people can do to potentially mitigate a situation like that?
Those stories upset me so much.
Yeah, that was crazy when I heard that.
Yeah, it's just well, the first thing is a super practical tip, which is CBD. If you feel too high, have a CBD oil tincture, hemp derived or bought from a dispensary, and take a dropper and put it under your tongue and hold it there for 30 to 60 seconds. And in about 15 minutes, you will feel less high and more like yourself. So that is the most practical tip that I try to tell everyone about getting to a point where you feel too high. The larger reason that this is happening is it's a complex one in the industry, and I don't need to go into all the details of it because it gets into literally like state by state questions about medical consumers who need higher THC in order to alleviate their pain for medical conditions. And then you have consumers who have been in the industry for a long time, illegal or legal, who tend to be, at this moment, it's about 12% of the market is, they want the highest THC at the lowest price. And so the market, which is complicated because you can't bank federally in cannabis, so you need to sell weed in order to keep your business going, they are catering to that consumer that wants high THC and wants to buy it a lot. All of those things are coming together. And you also have this huge influx of new or, newish consumers to the legal market who don't have a lot of experience with cannabis, are interested in just having sort of like a, the equivalent of like a 2 or 3 drink buzz. And they are eating an edible that's very strong and very high in THC, or smoking a joint or smoking flower that is 30% plus of THC. And my best advice is just don't start with very much THC. If you buy a 10 milligram edible, cut it into fourths. Like, I like 2 milligrams of THC in my edibles, and I like 6 milligrams at least of CBD. Like, I like a 3-to-1, and everyone is different. Everyone's endocannabinoid system is different. It doesn't matter what your weight, your sex, whatever, like cannabis is going to affect you based on the endocannabinoid system that you have in your body. However, most people don't want to drink, a bottle of tequila. And that's what some of these edibles can be. That's what some of these really high THC flowers can be. They just don't look like it. And so it's hard when you go to a dispensary or you're ordering delivery and you're just kind of like, oh, that sounds like a funny name, I'll try that. And then you get it home and it's 35% THC. And I've had this experience. I was at a work thing on a Friday, and I was with some incredible pioneers in the cannabis industry, learning from them, and they lit up a joint, and I took one hit from it, and it was renowned, amazing strain that people in the industry love. It was way too strong for me. One hit, I had like racing mind, and luckily I was just going home and I knew my CBD trick. And so I got home and I walked in, my husband was like, what's going on with you? I'm like, I can't believe this. I am like terribly too high. And so I took the CBD tincture and, felt better in about 15 minutes. But weed can be strong, especially if it is not something that you're used to having. So just start low. There is no shame in starting low. There is a lot of weed to go around. You can get more. This won't be the only time. So it's worth starting slowly and just seeing how your body feels. And I'm on a roll here, but the other most important thing to know for women is that cannabis affects women differently based on where you are in your cycle. So there can be up to a 30% difference in your sensitivity to THC based on where you are in your cycle. And so literally the same weed that you smoke on day 2 of your period is going to be really different than a week before your period. So
I've experienced that, and I totally thought it was me.
No, hormones.
Wow.
That makes so much sense though. Like, of course it does, but we don't think about it that way. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's huge.
Yeah. So it's, I'm not trying to take anyone's fun away, but I just think that having too much THC in your system is generally not fun for anyone. So figuring out the right amount for you. And most people say, high THC strains are over 20% THC. So try out like a 15 or an 18% and just see how you feel. And if you are going to have something that is over 20, maybe just 1 or 2 hits from a joint, for instance.
I mean, if that, I always am like, give me that bottom shelf, outdoor grown. Like, I do not want my strains fucked with. I want straight from nature, like regular THC, CBD balance, whatever, like Gaia put into it, and then we'll go from there.
Great.
I'm so curious also about, so for me, I think I'm just intuitively drawn towards smoking flower over any other any other way you can consume. And I'm absolutely going to get myself a tincture too, to experiment with that when I get back into the city. But for somebody like me, like I actually have a lot of sensitivity around smoke, and I've tried the packs, and there really is a difference when you're smoking a vape and when you're smoking out of a pipe. But for somebody who has like a sensitive throat or sensitive, respiratory system, what would you recommend if they still wanted to do the flower, but just needed a solution that wasn't just a regular pipe?
Well, I've talked to a lot of doctors about this, and the best advice that I've gotten is a dry herb vaporizer that you can change the temperature. So the kind of optimal temperature of a vaporizer, whether it's a packs that you plug in or a dry herb vaporizer, there's a company called Omura that makes one. There are packs is probably the most well known. 390 degrees seems to be the optimal temperature that kind of balances what happens in your lungs. Dr. Chin, who gave me this advice, would be able to tell you exactly what's happening, but I've just remembered 390 degrees. So if you can set the temperature of a vaporizer, set it to 390 degrees. She also recommends having something like elderberry tea with you so that you are coating the mucous membranes and supporting them at the same time that you're bringing the smoke into your lungs. I think that this is another thing that everyone experiments, and you need to experiment, and not everyone's going to be the same, but the effects from a vape pen generally can be a little bit different than smoking a joint. And so you kind of just need to experiment with what you like better. Having a discreet, odorless, non-fire based way of consuming cannabis can be really great in certain situations. Like I like to hike and, have a little weed on the hike, and I don't want to bring a joint into the super dry, drought-ridden woods of California.
Right.
And so a vape pen makes a lot more sense. And so it can be sort of situational. But the 390 degree tip is one that I try to give out as much as possible. And then also just making sure that like an elderberry, some kind of a tea is what Dr. Chin had recommended for people who are sensitive.
That's such great
elderberry.
advice.
I love to hear that because I actually always have used elderberry when we do our like the journeying ceremonies too, because I found that the elderberry tea in particular like was really soothing for my throat.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
totally
that's
going to
so
stock
interesting.
up. Wow. Um, I also wanted to get into the stress and the rest part of, the benefits as well, because I think the last 2 years, it goes without saying that our nervous systems are probably pretty thrashed. But what would you recommend for somebody who is just, I guess it's two really different questions, but like if they're feeling anxious and they're needing to like just regulate and calm their nervous systems down, is there a particular strain that you recommend, or like what would you recommend to them?
Definitely a strain that has CBD in it, and an equal, if not more, edible that has CBD in it. I think that CBD, for me especially, it's a cannabinoid that really connects with my body, so it works very well for me and has a lot of calming effects. But in general, the possibilities of feeling anxiety increase the more THC you bring into your system. That's not the case with CBD, which tends to be more calming, more relaxing. And so, and then you go back to the entourage effect that I was talking about before, like getting the plant in its natural combination is a really great way to bring the plant into your body. So I think that if you are considering cannabis for stress and anxiety, look for strains that have high CBD in them. And I think that it also, just don't the expectations around cannabis sometimes are that it's going to be this like huge dramatic feeling, and
Yeah.
it's often very subtle. And I think that recognizing that it's subtle and paying attention to what's going on in your body and actually considering like, oh, do I feel a little bit better, is a really important part of cannabis. I have recommended just CBD gel caps to a friend who was feeling a lot of anxiety. And I checked in a few weeks later to see how they were doing. And the answer was, oh, I'm definitely feeling better. I don't really know why. And I was like, well, it's probably because of the CBD.
Yeah.
It's not, it doesn't always have to manifest itself in a euphoric feeling. Sometimes it's just
Right.
like, oh, I just feel like myself. Because when the endocannabinoid system, its purpose in your body is to balance all the other systems. And we all have receptors in our body that connect with cannabis as a plant. And so when those receptors, when you have, and I'm not a doctor, I don't want to be a doctor here, but in general, the like high level of this is cannabis can be very balancing for your body. And sometimes balancing for your body just means feeling like the way you want to feel. Not necessarily a super intoxicated feeling or something like that. So paying attention to how you feel and what's happening is a huge part of finding the right cannabis that works for you. It's sort of a sense of well-being, I would say, that is like but it can really be almost like a little wave of well-being, but you have to be aware of it.
Well, I think the point that I hear you saying throughout our entire conversation so far, and I respect and I love that you're bringing this up repeatedly, is you're learning how to observe and be like in connection with your body again. And you're learning how to just listen to your body. And I find that any plant medicine, that really is, like the plant medicine is kind of holding your hand and helping you through some of these difficult situations or difficult feelings. But really, you're kind of just reconnecting to your body also through it and learning what's working and learning how it's feeling and observing and just listening.
Come back into equilibrium.
Yeah, and you're right. It oftentimes is so subtle because you're just basically coming back to center, or, you're just re-regulating yourself so that you're, at an equilibrium again. So, but I think it just speaks to the fact that so many of us are so disconnected from our bodies that I think the idea of quote unquote healing or feeling better has to feel like radical or something, like some radical somatic transformation, which it doesn't, So I appreciate that so much. What would you recommend for somebody who's just not sleeping very well, probably because of an anxious nervous system? Like, is it CBD as well that you would recommend?
Well, cannabis with sleep is super interesting. And the question that I always ask is, do you have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep? And the answer is different for a lot of people. Some people say they have both, but most of the people that I talk to have one or the other. And if you are having trouble falling asleep, THC has shown to be very beneficial. If you're having trouble staying asleep, CBD and the regulation of your body through CBD tends to be more helpful. So for instance, I have never had sleep issues in my life, but I have a 3-year-old. When he was young, I had this business. I would wake up with him in the middle of the night and then I couldn't get back to sleep. And so I started taking 25 milligrams of CBD in a gel cap before bed. And within really, I would say a couple of weeks, my sleep patterns were sort of back to what they had been. And I continue to take it just because I am more of like a wake up at 3 a.m. kind of person. I don't have trouble falling asleep. So CBD works really well for me. Maddie, my brand manager, has a lot of sleep issues and she needs a little bit of THC. And I think most people that have trouble falling asleep, THC is extremely helpful. And there isn't a lot of great data, but there is more data, interestingly, because veterans who are experiencing PTSD often have night terrors and terrible dreams. And so there has been some good and interesting research that's showing that THC puts you to sleep. It kind of limits the REM sleep, which can cause these terrible nightmares. But it gets your body to sleep. And I think that There isn't a lot of data. Again, you have to experiment, but most of the kind of common sense doctors who are either interested in cannabis or don't know about cannabis, the value of sleep and what it can do for your body is so important that if cannabis is working for you, even if you are maybe limiting your REM sleep, I think most of them would say it's worth it because your body is getting rest. So we have a whole series that's coming out about this in the new year and multiple episodes. And I've talked to a lot of different women. So we're just digging into this now and what we do know. But the most important question to ask about sleep is the falling asleep or staying asleep question.
That's
Wow.
so helpful.
Yeah, that's really insightful. If you ever talk to a woman who is just like, okay, I just need a little bit of help sort of regulating my hormones because my cycle's been off, because I just stopped going on the pill or whatever it is, I was, pregnant, now I'm not, whatever it might be. Generally, like, what are some good things to think about?
Gosh, I feel like that's a little bit outside of my area of expertise. I think that reaching out to a cannabis doctor or a cannabis nurse is probably going to be your best bet because those are transitional times in a person's body that you're describing. And whether you have other prescription drugs in your system or, what might be changing, I don't feel like I can answer that. Except anecdotally, which is to say that for me, CBD is a cannabinoid that has helped to balance my body. And I don't need the THC. The THC for me is, um, I love it. I love THC. I love having cannabis with THC in it, but as a balancing effect, CBD works for me. But Sandra Gwines is a nurse who is amazing. She goes by the Kush nurse. Dr. June Chin is a New York-based doctor, and they all do telemedicine. The American Cannabinoid Clinics, it's a family of doctors, all who have mainstream training and have just really, really dug into cannabis. So those are the experts that I trust. And when I've had my own personal questions about how to bring cannabis into my life to solve a specific problem, I've reached out to them.
That's super helpful. Thank you. Because I wasn't even aware that there were doctors who specialize in this, although I guess by now I should have assumed that.
Well, hopefully more. I mean, it's actually sort of something that I ask a lot of women to consider, which is if you are finding relief with cannabis for a medical symptom, bring it up with your doctor if you feel comfortable, because the only way that doctors are going to pay more attention to cannabis is if their patients start asking them more questions. And they're very busy. There's a lot to learn in medicine. But if 10 patients a week are saying, hey, this is really helping my migraines, I feel like most doctors would say, all right, I need to dig into this. And that's what we want, because that's what's going to start the momentum towards more questions from physicians, more questions that lead to better research. And that's what's really going to allow a conversation like this to offer the best advice. And we're just not there yet.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it feels exciting, I think, because we are still kind of at the beginning, even though this is such an ancient medicine, but I feel like just the doors are now open for us to really explore. And I think they're just going to continue to widen out as time goes on. We always love to end our in our conversations with this one question, which is, now having kind of gone down this journey with cannabis, like, what is the one piece of wisdom or truth that you really live by that has kind of shaped your life or transformed your life since, cannabis kind of joined forces with you, so to speak?
I've learned so much. I think that this is as a person who, followed a lot of rules during my life, and I got my MBA. I worked on Wall Street. I have tried to take a lot of mainstream paths that I thought would lead in, the direction that a beautiful life moves forward with. Cannabis was not what I expected to be a part of. And it has caused me to open my mind in a way that I think is just opening up my life in a beautiful way. And I think that for me, working in cannabis has been a series of sort of removing judgment, remove judgment. Oh, you met this person, remove judgment, remove judgment. And that has just been such a gift in my life, where I'm just much more interested um, in why things are the way they are. And I think that really is sort of that's the greatest gift that cannabis has given me, this openness and willingness to consider different things. I still bring, the analysis side of things that I learned working for an investment bank to it. So it's not that I don't have the parts of me that are still a critical thinker and all of those things, but just what I learned might not necessarily be true about this plant. And so how can I learn more and get to a place of truth?
I love
I love
that.
that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. It's like, I just learned this when I first started working with cannabis, but of all the plant medicines, like, she is known as the mother, and it's just this like sort of, I don't know, very nurturing and very gentle kind of energy, that is, it just, she takes care of you. I don't know how else to say, except it's like she just nurtures you in this beautiful way. And I feel like the openness that you're talking about is so much of like a mother's kind of energy. And so, yeah, that's really beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Well, thank you so much for being here. And
Yeah, this was so helpful. I'm so
yeah,
excited to share this.
I know. I can't wait. And I just feel like I have 1,000 more questions for you, but basically I'm just gonna like be binging your podcast.
And send me your questions. Most of our shows have come about because of someone's question, and we want to follow leads. And the questions that you have are probably the questions that many other women have. And we are just trying to be a resource and a friend in weed. So you don't, there is a lot of information that's out there, and some of it can be amazing, super helpful information. But if it's on a website that's like iloveweed.com, like, are you going to share that with your mom? I don't know. And so
Yeah.
we're just trying to make this accessible and feel like something that is worth learning about. And I think that personal stories and the stories that I hear all the time, I just can't not share them because they've had such an impact on me. And so send along your questions for sure.
Oh, beautiful.
Absolutely. I
Thank
love
you.
that.
Can I ask you just one really almost kind of, it's more of like my own personal kind of curiosity, but what do you call cannabis? Do you call it weed?
Well, interesting you bring this up. So we have a new series. We just started a new series called Weed Words, which is sort of just to this point. When I was working in the investment world, I felt like there were a lot of words that were sort of intimidating, and I didn't like it. And I learned them, and then I was able to share and help people feel hopefully less intimidated. But I think cannabis has a lot of words like that. So this whole series is about just taking those words on and giving the information out freely to women. And our Halloween episode was our first episode of Weed Words, and it was about paranoia. So a really, really fun one that had practical tips about how to not feel paranoid with cannabis, but also a bit of history around why there is sort of a cultural paranoia about cannabis. And our Thanksgiving episode is about the munchies and,
Oh my
scientifically
God.
what they
I love
are, but
this so
also like
much.
what's fun about them. And we are going to be talking about the word marijuana in January, which is a complicated word for people in cannabis because it has racist roots. And so how do people feel about that, especially given that there's still 40,000 people in prison for cannabis crimes, and most of them are Black and brown. And then there's another movement, kind of like with the word queer, where people are saying, no, marijuana is a word that I want to take back, and I want to feel empowered when I say this. So lots of complicated words in cannabis.
Yeah. And like, where did Mary Jane come from?
right? Ganja, there are just so many interesting words. So what I generally say is cannabis or weed. I grew up saying pot for sure.
Me too.
And I think that there are also a lot of words that are sort of meant to be secret. If you're talking about something that's illegal, you probably need a code word for it. And so I say weed now mostly, and cannabis, but it's a fun conversation, especially if you kind of like to geek out on words.
Yeah, that podcast sounds amazing. I can't wait to hear it.
It's so up my alley too. And it's because words are so powerful. And so I don't say pot anymore very, very consciously, because I think my stigma around it is associated with that word. So I refer to her as cannabis, but, and sometimes weed when I'm, kind of talking more like in my friend circles. But even then, I think I find myself calling her cannabis more because it's like more formal in a weird way. Like it's almost like I want to give her respect. I don't know, but it's so subconscious. But yeah, I was so fascinated by that.
It's one of the reasons that we name the podcast How to Do the Pot, because I feel like people who intuitively call it pot do have some fear and stigma. And I wanted to just bring a little lightness to that word for people.
That's totally like how my dad would say it.
I know. I love the way that, how to do the pot. It's perfect. It's so perfect. All right. For real this time. Thank you so much.
Thank you both for having me. It's been great talking.
Yeah, same. I really enjoyed it.
Music for Woo New is composed by Adam Miller.